Hi there, it's Nicole for Lawn Fawn, and today I have a card featuring the Mom Plus Me stamps and dies. I did a little no-line coloring with some distress markers and distress ink with the cute fox images here, as well as used distress ink for all of my die cut images. I had forgotten to turn my video camera on, but I did die cut this stitched square frame die, also new from Lawn Fawn. This is the second largest of the square frames, from watercolor cardstock twice. And from one of the inside square pieces, I die cut a landscape using one of the simple stitched hillside borders dies. And then I'm going to apply distress inks to these pieces using the mini ink blending tools. I'm using some Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn Distress inks for the grassy border. I'm blending these two together. It's going to be darker near the top and lighter near the bottom portion. I'm using an extra piece of paper to kind of hold on to this and keep my fingers out of the ink so there aren't any finger smudges. Once the ink is all blended, I'm going to go ahead and take my tumbled glass distress ink and color in the sky on this square. And I like to usually keep the color a little bit darker near that landscape or horizon border and then get lighter near the top. I am doing all my ink blending on the Simon Says Stamp grid paper. This is a great work surface that you can just simply tear off the top sheet and throw it away after you're done working on your project. I decided I wanted the ink to transition from the inside panel to the border, so I am going to just kind of put it all together here so I have a baseline or guideline for where I want to apply the ink, and then I will apply some distress ink to that outside frame. Then I will take the green inks, the Mowed Lawn Distress ink and the Twisted Citron, or I think maybe I'm only using the Twisted Citron here, to add a little green to the frame itself. Once that's done, I am going to go ahead and take the Distress Sprayer, which is my favorite tool when using distress inks, spritz these pieces with water, let it sit for about 30 seconds, and then blot it dry. The Distress Sprayer does create much bigger, more concentrated splotches or blotches or whatever you want to call them, splatters, than the Mini Mister did. So if you really like that look of bigger droplets, distressed droplets on your project, I highly recommend the Distress Sprayer. I am inking up these grass images with a combination of the Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn Distress inks. Just kind of rolling them together there and inking those up and stamping them. And then if they don't stamp really clearly, which the distress inks tend to not maybe stamp as crisply as some of other dye inks that you might be used to, all you have to do is take a paintbrush dipped in water or slightly damp, go over the individual leaf or blades of grass there and blend it out, and it will not smooth out those inks and really make it look nice. I stamped the fox image with the Antique Linen Distress ink because I want to do a little no-line coloring. So it's really, really light, even kind of hard to see there. And then I'm gradually going to start pulling in some color. And I applied the Gathered Twigs and Rusty Hinge Distress inks to an acrylic block, or the distress markers rather. I just used the brush tip, wiped it on an acrylic block. And then with a damp, not a wet, but just a damp paintbrush, I am applying the ink to my image. At first, I think it's kind of hard to see. I did go in with my Gathered Twigs first and blended it out a little bit. You definitely have more control the less water you use. So I like to just barely get my paintbrush wet. In fact, I kind of touch the tip to a dry paper towel to blot off any of that excess water that might get on the tip of my paintbrush, and then start coloring in with my inks. So the gathered twigs is going to serve as more of an outline of sorts, and then the rusty hinge is going to be more the color of my fox. But blended together, these two colors look really great together, I think. And I like to work in small images and gradually work my way kind of up and out, I guess. Now, as I'm working on this, I did take that antique linen ink pad that I used to stamp the image, pressed it on my acrylic block, and then I just used my damp paintbrush to pick up some of that color, which is super duper light, but perfect for the fox faces and the tip of the tail. It adds just a tiny touch of color. Then I'll go back in and I will finish off the face on the fox, again using some rusty hinge ink here, pulling in a little gathered twigs now. And I'm sorry for my head getting in the way. I kind of got close there wanting to make sure that I could see exactly where I was applying the color. Gonna blend that, keep blending that out, working those colors together, pulling in more of the rusty hinge to really get that nice rusty kind of great color, perfect for a fox. And then the face area where I use the antique linen is sort of light, so I'm very, very lightly picking up a little gathered twigs and outlining that just a bit. Now when that is completely dry, I'm going to go ahead and die cut the image. In fact, you can see that I did the fox once before, but had a little too much water and I just didn't like how it turned out, so I went ahead and stamped it again. I'm going to pop out my images, and I'm going to use about 3 of these blades of grass images. I stamped more than what I actually ended up needing. And then I'm going to stamp another one of the fox images, one of the small fox images. I thought it would be cute to have, with the greeting I'm going to be using, to have more than one small fox image. Using my stamp as a kind of guideline to make sure I get the noses and the eyes in the right areas, I'm using the Sakura Black glaze pen to draw in the eyes and add a little black detail to the nose area. And then I'll set that aside to dry really well while I work on that second fox image like I was saying a little bit ago. I colored it exactly the same, so I'm not going to share the coloring. The marker colors I used are exactly the same. It's just a little bit smaller image. Again, stamping it with the antique linen distress ink. And when that's dry, I will die cut it with the coordinating Mom Plus Me die. And again, take my black gel pen and draw in the nose and the eyes. And I just referenced the stamp again to make sure that I drew them in correctly. Now, once that bottom landscape is completely dry, you might even have to hit it with a heat tool to make sure it's not wet at all. I used a powder tool along that, and I'm stamping the word Grandma from the Mom Plus Me stamp set using Versamark ink. I'll sprinkle on some white embossing powder so I can see where I've been, and I decided to go ahead and heat that up, and then I stamped the remaining greeting on either side of that scripty tail there on the G. I've trimmed down a top fold card base to 4 1/4 inch square, and then I will apply the frame and the centerpiece to my card. Thanks for watching this video showcasing the Mom Plus Me stamps and dies from Lawn Fawn. The supplies I've used are listed and linked below the video on YouTube. Here are a couple more no-line coloring videos you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.